Howdy, this is Daniel with Roslyn Rags, and welcome to a tie-dye tutorial. In this video, I would like to show a simple one-color spiral. And what I have is a fork that I've kind of flattened with a vise, and I have a shirt that has been soaked in soda ash, and it's not super wet, but it's not completely dry either. And what I'm doing for the spiral is wherever I want the center of the spiral to be is where I place the fork, and I'm just kind of spinning the fabric together, trying to keep it at an even height. And the further out from the spiral that you get, the higher the folds are going to get. The very center of the spiral will have very small folds. And instead of spinning the fork completely, I'm kind of just manipulating the fabric and keeping the center of the spiral in one place. And I'm just going to continue in that fashion, and I don't want to get very much of the fabric on top of other parts of the fabric or the shirt. When that happens, then you kind of start to lose definition, and that's not what you want to make a nice tie-dye. So here is the spiral. Now I'm just going to put rubber bands all the way around it. The more rubber bands you put on, the easier the fabric or the shirt will be to kind of move around, so it doesn't unfold on you. Because once you folded it, you don't really want to fold it again, unless you don't feel comfortable with the fold. Then you can go ahead and fold it again. So here is our spiral. Now let's go dye it. So what I have is some black dye here, and it is a 8-ounce container, and I mix it with approximately 6 teaspoons of dye. With lighter dyes, you don't have to add as much dye powder, but with black, I do like to add a little bit. And I have just 3 8-ounce bottles that have been filled halfway with water. And what I'm going to do is, this was 100% black, if you will. This will be 50% black, or a 1-to-1 water to black ratio. And I'll give it a quick mix, and then I will add this 50% dilution to this bottle. And this will become a 50% dilution of this, which is a 25% dilution of this. I'll give this a quick shake, and I'll put my bottle on this one. Now I will take my lids off, and I'll add water or the dye to this one. If you don't have a whole lot of dye, this one, like, I only had black, so I'm going to just do a simple 4 pi segment die out of it, and I'm just going to start with the most solid black right here, and I'm going to put it right here in this area, and I'm going to go in the next 90-degree quadrant over here with the next shade, and then just keep on going around the spiral until I'm all done. So that looks pretty good there. Now let me start with this one. I'm gonna try and put a little bit less dye where the different dilutions are going to meet, so then when I turn it over it may be a little bit easier to see where they come together at. I'm going to try and hit the very edge right here pretty good, and then the very center doesn't need as much dye, and out here the further out from the center that you get, the more fabric there is, so the more dye that you'll need to use for that area of it. So that's looking pretty good right now. Now I'm going to go to the next dilution. And I'm going to do this quarter right here. And sometimes it's easy to kind of draw on where you're going to be putting the dye and then just going in between the two sections. So kind of draw in your lines, and if you want to, stay within those. If you don't want to, you don't have to. Make sure that you get the very edges of the design. That's easy to miss out on sometimes. Alright, that feels pretty good. Now let's go on with the weakest dilution. And some of these dye balls have different size holes in the little Yorkshire spout, and sometimes it's easier to just cut it off and just have a big opening. Sometimes you want a smaller opening depending on what kind of designs that you're working on. If you're just doing like the background of a tapestry, something like that, you don't need a whole lot of control on where you're putting the dye, so you may just want to cut a big chunk off of the spout. If you're doing a bunch of mandalas on bandanas or something, you may want something with a lot more control, so you may want to have a smaller spout. I'm just putting a little more dye on this side. Sometimes it helps to let the dye soak in for a few minutes depending on how much extra time you have. And I'm using Procyon MX Fiber Reactive Dye, and you can find that online. I'll put a link of where I get my dyes from in the description. Alright, let's turn it over and see how it is. Alright, that looks pretty good. We have our dark black, darkest here, and then it goes this way to the lightest black. So I'm going to start with the darkest black, and I'm going to go a little bit off of where the previous lines were for the black, and it should show in the finished piece that I did not go directly on top of the original black, and then I'm just going to keep on following this around, and since I turned it over, I'm using the same colors but in the opposite direction. I'm making sure to try and evenly saturate the whole area. That looks pretty good. Now I'm going to move on to this next one. Next dilution of black. Alright, that looks good. Oops. Squeezing the bottle. Now the lightest dilution of black. And this has a larger opening so I can apply the dye a little bit quicker. Alright, that looks pretty good. Now I'm going to put it in a plastic bag and let it sit for 24 hours at least, and then I will wash it out. Thanks for watching and have fun dyeing.